See it?
This is, are you videotaping now? This is my father, Wolf Pakula, and I'm his son, Barry. And for many years, since 1980, my father has been speaking to student groups about the Holocaust since he spent 54 months under the Nazi regime in different concentration camps in the ghetto. And so he has a story to tell, and he speaks on a regular basis 3 to 4 times a year with high school and college groups, so this is kind of a younger group. So, but in any event, this is the number my father got in Auschwitz, and the number is B2495. That's his number, and in I believe it was 1997, we went, 96, we went back there with my father, my brother, and I, and we went to Auschwitz, and that number was on a document identifying when he came in there, when he left, and we were able to secure a copy, which is at the Holocaust Museum in Hollywood, Florida. Okay?
Thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit about your family and where you were born?
I was born in Poland, in a small town, and my father was in business. We was 5 brothers, and when we met of age, my oldest brother went to university, learned as an engineer. And my younger brother went to Warsaw and went to yeshiva, and I went to learn a trade in the city. And my oldest brother was my father in business, and my youngest was still, and they took him away, he was only 15 years old.
Okay. Did you have any non-Jewish friends before the war? Did you have any non-Jewish friends before the war?
Yes, I had.
And did this change?
Pardon?
Did it change?
Did it change? What do you mean change?
Did something, like, once the Nazis began taking over, did it affect your friendship with your
the change was they supposed to stay away from Jewish people, and they was right away Jew. They was even not so friendly even before the Germans came in. We had to fight with them. When we go swimming, we had to fight whenever. We always had to ourselves. But they were not too friendly.
When did you first start to experience changes from the Nazis?
Right when they came in.
What sort of things did they do in the beginning?
The Poles?
Like the Nazis, what sort of roles did they set
did. First of all, in the beginning they didn't do nothing. They just beat us right on that highway that went to Warsaw. There was a big army was going to Warsaw, and we tried to get away before they came, to get away from them, but they beat us. It was before we got there. And we came back home, and we stayed about a year, not quite a year, and then they threw us out in the homes and put us in the ghetto. They brought people from the Germans had it by the port, Gdańsk. They were the Polacks living. They said it belongs to them. They put Germans there. The Polacks put the place where the Jews was living. And they took away and they put us in a ghetto.
Okay. What was the method of transportation to the camps?
Cattle cars.
What was it like?
Well, I feel like an animal, that's all. But we feel wasn't right. Well, I tell you, when I was taken right away, maybe a few months later, when the Germans came, they need people to work, and we went into a place they called employment office. There was lots of people that took from 45 lower than 16 to 45. I was with 2 brothers there, and they sent us away for 4 weeks to work. Only one brother can go there. If you got more than one brother that takes. So I volunteer if I had a trade, so I go. And it took us overnight. We was in eastern Poland called Lublin. And there was a military Air Force base. And they started to make a camp called Majdanek. And we built that Majdanek. We worked very hard there. And in the morning we got up, we had to wash with cold water on the outside. It wasn't fall. And on Saturdays we used to go to a shower downtown, but there used to be a mikveh. And there we used to pass there where the yeshiva was. They took, we saw them taking off the gold letters from the yeshiva. And that's the only time we used to go out there. Sometimes we could go out. In the beginning, it was not so strict. And one time I stayed in the line for food, and two guys went in front of me, and I told them, "You cannot go. You got to stay in the line." So they didn't want to move it. So I didn't take anything. I said, "You better go." So I had a fight with them, and they put me in their hall. There was a few people there. There was no windows, and they was praying. So I asked them, "Why you pray?" They said that tomorrow morning they take us all out and they're going to shoot us. So I know that's the end of it. And I stayed by the door, and the door opened up, and the commandant called me outside to shine his boots, and I shined his boots. He looked at me and said, "You work in the cabinet shop?" I said, "Yes." So he asked what I did, and I told him. So you go back to work, and the next day they took him off and shot him. So I figured that's not a place for me. I cannot. So I had a cousin. She looks like a Gentile, and her brother was there too. And she wrote us a pass to buy a ticket. You cannot buy a ticket on the train until you have a pass to buy a ticket. And that's why we ran away. I went home, and I was in the ghetto. It was in 41. And in the ghetto, I worked as a cabinet maker for the Gestapo. They had the shop there. And in 42, so the ghetto was very bad. People died in the street for hunger. They had not to eat. And they were shooting people. The Germans who were born in Poland, they were called the Volksdeutsch. They were the worst ones. They became the dogs. They bite the people. They didn't like, they shoot you. So they used to take out people in the morning from the houses, which one, like a man was a doctor, became a big doctor, a surgeon, or it was a well-known people. They took him out and shot him, quite a few people. And then it came the time in 1942, after the holidays, in November, they said they're going to send out all the Jews. It was in 2 days. It was 15,000. They couldn't. They brought a farm with the wagons on a place there, and they turned from there in the wagons, and they took them to the train. And the Gestapo told me they got to fire me. They don't need me no more. They're going to send you away. So I asked him to give me a paper with the seal. So then in the ghetto was a factory where they make furniture for the army. So I wanted to go there, so the guard said, "You cannot go," and I showed from the Gestapo that seal, so they let me through. And I went over there, and I was hired. They didn't want to hire me, but they was fighting. I got hired to stay there, and there was 300 Jewish people working there. We had to send away all the Jews. We remained 1,000 trade people with all kind of trades. We stayed there till April, May, in 43. And then they sent us to a camp near Warsaw, not far from Warsaw. We was there almost a year, and there was the typhoid fever. About 1,500 people died. There was about 5,000 of us. I had the fever too, but a German who was a foreman I was a foreman in the cabinet shop. He kind of liked me as a foreman. He used to bring me food to eat, and I survived the sickness. And then the Russians started to come close, and the Polak army tried to free themselves without the Russians, so the Russians stood back, and they couldn't do it. So the Germans took them all on the prisons, and they overpowered those Polacks, and they were afraid to come to us, so they sent us to Auschwitz. We came to Auschwitz. We going in for showers, for disinfection, all that. And we went in those rooms and we had to put the gas. But I thought that's at the end of it. But they had a letter from the commandant from the camp that all trade people, they go only for rest there. So they saved us. And from there, I stayed there till the fall. And they was making elections to go to Germany. And I stayed in the line, and Dr. Mengele comes close to me with an officer, a Russian officer. He was a prisoner, he was a doctor. And he asked the Russian officer, what's wrong with his arm? I had a bandaged arm. He said, he's ready to go to work. And he saved me, otherwise I'd go to the oven. So I went to Germany. I was in Landsberg, they belonged to Dachau. Worked there, and then they sent me to another camp. I got sick on my leg. I couldn't walk 8 kilometers to work and back. So they sent me to that camp. There was a typhoid fever also. And I got well with my sore. And they made me help those sick people take the fever away with towels, with hot towels and cold towels to get the fever away. And there was a young boy there, about 15 years old, and he tried to hang himself. He had a typhoid fever. And I kind of down, and I told the doctor to give him a shot. He said, the shot is only for older people if they need it. I said, you have to give him a shot, otherwise you don't get no food. Well, I had all the food that people couldn't eat that was sick. So he gave him a shot. And that man is living here in the United States who I saved him. He lives in Cleveland. And I was well invited to his daughter's wedding. And he's got a son in Miami, he's an eye specialist. He had 4 kids. So he mentioned the wedding that wouldn't be for this man, I wouldn't be all that today. And and I was from there, that was by the end, they took us to Dachau. And Dachau was, well, I had all kind of incidents before. Like I was in the ghetto, and they needed to send away some people. I know they were looking for me too. So I hide in the outhouse, in the toilet. And me and another guy, he lived in Israel, and he said, they're gonna look for us. I said, don't worry. We got time to see if they could look for us. And they sent them away, 150 people. And then it was all over. And when I come out, the German said, where you been? I had to go to the bathroom. He said, you're lucky. I had a few incidents. So we went to Dachau, and we slept in the Dachau overnight, and then we did the march. There was the Death March, and I was 10 days on the Death March. And then I got liberated from the American Army. I had another incident. When I was in ghetto, I had a cousin. He says, we could go out in the woods. I had relatives, cousins, and uncles, and aunts. They were hiding in the woods, about 6 people. And he said, let's go out together. And I says, you go first and I come later. 2 days later, a Polish underground army killed them all. And I could have been there too. So I escaped that. And so I got liberated, and it was May the 2nd, 1945, for the American Army. Any questions can I answer?
Okay, so I ask the next question? What was the camp of the ghetto like? What was your first view of it? What was your first view of the camp or ghetto?
Camp or ghetto? It was not pleasant. You had no freedom. The food wasn't like you used to eat. Camp Well, you was locked up, you couldn't go no place, just work and sleep, work and sleep. Eat was just to live, not to die. They gave you enough food just to survive.
What did it look like, the camps?
The camps, there was barracks, there were 3 layers, there was straw, to lay on the straw, and that's what it. You have to get up 5 o'clock in the morning, ready to go to stay in the line. They come to people, and then you got to stay in the line for your soup, for your food, coffee, whatever it was, call it coffee. Then you go to work, you come back, you count again the people, then you stay in the line again for the soup, and then you go to sleep. So it goes that way around the clock. I was a foreman in a cabinet shop. I had 25 men under me. They made ammunition boxes for the army. Lots of times we worked at night while the plane was flying overhead. We couldn't work in days. So in the morning, the officer, German, come to the assessment and counts the boxes. Everybody had to make 25 boxes. Whoever didn't make it to 25 gets 100 lashes. So I was responsible. He counted all the boxes, and one of them wasn't made to 25 boxes. He asked me who didn't do it, and I said, I don't know. And when you don't know who didn't do it, I said, no. So I got 25 instead of the 100, and that man was an old man. You would let him sleep. If he got the 100, he died, so I rather took the 25 instead of killing the person.
What kind of food was it?
It had soup, just like water. Sometimes you find some grain or some meat. Mostly it was horse meat. And a slice of bread. And you have to watch to either to save the piece of bread from the next day or to eat it now. A lot of them save to put under his head and one stove and the other one.
Okay. When did you get?
Okay. Did you?
No, I was only 18 years old when the war broke out, and after the war I was only 24, 23.
Did you see any family members or people that you knew from your town in the ghettos or any camps that you went to?
Ghettos, yeah, but after when they sent them away, I never saw them again. See, they send them and they liquidate every city at that time. They send them direct to Treblinka. Treblinka, there was no camp. They got off on the train straight in the ovens, straight to the gas chambers in the ovens. And I was there and I saw the place. They got from every city, they got a stone, whoever was there.
If you were religious, how did you keep your religion during the camp?
Nobody had a religion. Who wants to pray by heart. But one time, I did a big thing. And I was in Auschwitz. There was a Polak who was in charge of giving out the food. They used to bring the big barrels, and he used to give out the food. And he used to beat the people. He was as a Jew, had a chance to beat him up. And he picked me up that you're going to help me pass out the food. Help to wash it. They shouldn't give the people any water, otherwise they get diarrhea. And I asked him if he would watch that the German officer can come there to watch that people was to pray for Yom Kippur. He let me do it.
Did you the most helpful, like Did you have any people who helped you in the camps?
You help yourself. If you don't help yourself, you'll lose it. Everybody help themselves.
Okay, so was there ever a time when you felt like giving up?
No. If I would help give it up, I wouldn't be here today.
After witnessing all these different things, after like seeing all these people killed and everything, what did you feel about God?
I believe in God. I go every day to shul at home and in Florida, every morning and every night.
Who liberated the camp or the ghetto? And what was this experience like?
Liberation. We were sleeping in the woods. They used to hide us in the woods in southern Japan. The planes wouldn't fly, they bombed. And we slept all night in the woods. And I got up in the morning, I took some snow. I took some snow, put it in a can, and made a little fire to heat up to blow myself up. And then I went on the highway and I saw an American tank. And I go over there to the soldier and I asked him to give me something to eat. He didn't understand German or Jewish. And he asked me if I speak Polish, and he was Polak. And he helped me in that time.
Was there a time when you were was there a period of time when you were happy during the Holocaust? Or, and can you describe it?
Happy?
Yeah.
When you had enough to eat, and then you were happy. Not everybody else.
After the war was over, did you have nightmares or scary thoughts about your experiences?
A lot, all the time.
What were these like?
Pardon?
What were these like?
Like what? The dreams, nightmares. That was a lot of remembering who I lost. Not too much.
What happened to someone who got sick in a camp or in a ghetto?
And now in the camp, I got typhoid fever. It was 5,000 people, 15 or 100 died of typhoid fever. When I was in Germany, when the other people had typhoid fever, you only can get it once in your lifetime. And I was helping those people. And then those who used to bury the dead bodies, they got sick too, and I had to go to bury them. And we was a few guys pulling a wagon two-wheeler, and he put about 20, 25 bodies on it and take it to the hole. And there was a grave of about 3,000 people. Every night, after we put in the bodies, they put Clorox on it, shouldn't be any odors. And the next day we did again. And one time, when we was taking in the bodies, and the wheel belt turned over and all the bodies fell down. So we tried to take him back to put on the wheel, and that German officer who was our guard, he said, "Don't do it. Take out your belt, put it around the neck, and drag it to the grave." That's what we did. And I still got the belt. Barry's got the belt.
We heard that you give lectures about the Holocaust to students in Florida. What was the most interesting question that someone asked you, and what was your answer?
There's all kind of questions. They ask how I survived and how I did it and what the worst thing happened, all kind of questions they ask. They show a film from the war, the camps, and then there's people, speakers too. Lots of survivors go and tell their stories, and also there was a man who was a liberator in the army, and he was talking how he liberated people. We have all kind of people there. Come speak.
What would probably be the hardest question for you to answer?
They're all of them hard. Any minute any day. You just live by the day, that's all. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
How did you feel about people not believing or refusing to accept that the Holocaust happened? This kind of relates to, in England, how they stopped the Holocaust studies in the schools.
The schools? I don't even know how they started, but I know that they do it. How they made them do it, I don't know. I couldn't tell.
So, how do you feel about that? About these people?
They're very good. I'm doing it since 1980, and I do that, and I'm really happy to do it. The students, lots of them make me sign my name, like they take pictures with me, and they shake hands, and they're very happy to meet me. A survivor they never met. They've been asked if they read the stories, they read the books from my Wiesel, and they all read. Anybody saw Schindler's List and all those things. See, the Schindler's List was very perfect done, and it was so perfect, like it was real.
And the question was, Adria was asking you that people in the world sometimes say that Holocaust never happened. So she was asking for your reaction to that.
Well, I tell them, those people, they are the same people who was way before against the Jews. They look something to say something against it, they say this way. They look for something to say against the Jews. The same thing like the Iraq and that, Iran, this guy, the same thing.
I have a question. When did you first start telling maybe your family or friends about what happened to you in the Holocaust?
Well, right away, I didn't do it. Later on, I started to ask questions. See, I was liberated in 45. I was in Germany in a camp, a DP camp. They look for volunteers to be the police, and I volunteered in the police. And then I had a letter from Poland from my cousin I should come sell property. I was already married, and Barry was only 6 months old. And I stayed there 6 months and sold some property. I met a guy in my mother's hometown. He was a Russian major in the Russian army. And he was a Jewish guy, and was the macher in the city. He asked me, who are you? I says, I'm a grandson from Naaman. He said, who was your mother? And I told him, he said, I went with your mother in school. He went away from Poland to Australia before the war, and he came back for a visit, and then the war broke out, so he ran away from the Polacks and went to Russia. He came back a Russian officer, and he was on the town. Make sure that everything the Jewish people who ever needed. I told him I want to put on my name for my grandfather building, and he took care of it for me, everything. Yeah, so I sold that building at that time. I had other properties from my father. They took it away. They told me I didn't come back to 1952, so you don't give back any properties. I had some properties that was there, put away forever. They cannot touch it. And I found those papers, so I had a house and some land, and I just sold it about 2 years ago, the last one that I had.
Dad, the writer who wrote a little story about you, that was the first time you really told the whole story to somebody else other than Mom. What year was that?
Where?
With the man who wrote that story about you.
It was in Martinsville, Indiana.
What, do you remember what year?
It was in 51.
I can tell you as a child, my father didn't really tell the stories. My mother did, because she was a survivor also. And my mother always told us stories that she thought we could handle, or that she would say them in such a way that as we got older, they got more detailed. But my father really, in my memory, didn't speak much about the Holocaust until he was probably in his late 60s, early 70s, in detail at all. amongst the survivors, when they would get together as groups in this city, they were called the Greeners, meaning it's a Yiddish word for green, meaning newcomers. And they would get together for different functions. They had a commonality, they had a common experience, and they would talk and tell stories amongst themselves in Yiddish. And I was fortunate enough to understand Yiddish that I could hear those stories to a limited degree. I wasn't always there when they were talking about these things. So they had it. And you see similar things like that today amongst the Russian communities, the immigrants from Russia. Depending on which group came in what year, you find that they get together and they talk about their experiences, and they have a common ground that they can associate with each other and help each other. That's what the Greeners did. And when they came over.
You can't compare it. You can't compare it to
No,
Russia.
no, it's just not the same type of experience. But the
So
idea that Jews got
Poland-
together
In
to
Poland was
work together to help
in
each other.
Poland was 3.5 million Jews, and after the war there was left even 200,000, maybe. And now I don't know if it's 100,000 left.
Do we have any other questions from audience? Yes, Jared.
How do you identify your numbers? Like, what does it mean by the B and then the?
That means that is your name. Like, you know, there's no name, just a number. Like any prisons in the States, they got a number. That's what it's the same thing. No names,
So it just stands for your name?
just for my name, right?
Naomi?
How old were you when they put the number on your arm?
It was in 1944. In April of 1944. It was in Auschwitz. I'd already been in 2 camps, and I've been in a ghetto, and then in this.
Yes, Shavit.
Pakula, I know that survivors, because they had such experience, something changed in their characters. They're not the same people. I know many that they told me that become some different man or different woman. How it influenced you?
You see, lots of people changed. Lots of them was younger than me, and they was just grown up in camp. They didn't know any other lives. So they know that kind of life. It was wild. For me, I know I lived an adult life until 18 years old as an adult. I was myself. I was in another city, and I learned a trade to go to school. And after the war, I was the same way I was before. Nothing changed. Just for the younger ones, they didn't know any other way. They were brought up this way in the camp. I never got a friend in Chicago. He's now about 75, and how old could he be? About 15, 16 years old.
Thank you. Rebecca, please.
How did you escape? How after the war did you escape?
When I escaped,
Yeah, how did you escape?
I told you,
Escape from the war. How did they get out of the war?
Well, they were liberated by the Americans.
one time in the beginning I escaped. It was easy to escape. I did escape. If you go out and he catch you out of the ghetto, and you don't wear the badge for the David Star, you get shot. They know you're Jew. One time I went out in the country to bring some food, and they caught me. And they said, "Where did you get the food?" I said, "I worked for a farmer, and for work he gave me the food." They took me to the Gestapo. "Why did you go out?" I said, "I needed to eat." He says, "Who gave it?" And I told him. And I brought the Polak, the farmer, and told him why, and I told him to tell him why he gave me the food. He asked the fellow if he paid his taxes before he got the food to me. He says, "Yes, I paid my taxes." They let him go. And he kept asking questions, and he started to talk to me in German. I said, "I don't speak any German." So I brought an interpreter in Polish. I spoke perfect German, but I don't want to speak German. He was 6'6", and he gave me a slap in the face. I saw, help me God, I saw stars. And then he said, you are a tough Jew. He gave me back my foot and let me go.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Last question. Let's go for a last question. Do you have more?
Yes, do you still have your star, the yellow star?
No. You see, there was a different star in Lublin, in Majdanek. There was a different star in the other camp. There was in 4 camps. In Auschwitz, it was a triangle, a red one. The green one was for homosexuals. Then there was politicians, was other color, different colors.
So were you liberated from Auschwitz then?
No, from Dachau,
Dachau.
on the march, on the death march. I could go on the train, and I didn't want to go on the train. I want to walk. I figured it wouldn't take that fast, so I'd be closer to be liberated. And those people who were in train, they were bombed, they got killed. And the march, lots of people was, I was in the front, and they couldn't walk, so the dogs used to bite them, and they couldn't walk, they shot them.
Okay. Let's one more time. Let's thank our guest for a great story. Thanks a lot for your time. And thank our interviewees. And thank you guys for audience. You were a great audience, right? You did a good job. Thank you very much. German.
Sí.
Can you see it?
This is, are you videotaping now? This is my father, Wolf Pakula, and I'm his son, Barry. And for many years, since 1980, my father has been speaking to student groups about the Holocaust since he spent 54 months under the Nazi regime in different concentration camps in the ghetto. And so he has a story to tell, and he speaks on a regular basis 3 to 4 times a year with high school and college groups, so this is kind of a younger group. So, but in any event, this is the number my father got in Auschwitz, and the number is B2495.